Hello and welcome to the first part of Compliance Briefs on client due diligence, where we will cover the key elements of client due diligence. This compliance brief will begin by addressing some common misconceptions in applying client due diligence, CDD, will then cover key elements of client due diligence, explaining why it is essential to perform client due diligence. It will outline the potential consequences of failing to perform CDD, including legal and reputational risks. The brief will guide you through the process of conducting CDD effectively, detailing when it should be carried out for both new and existing clients. Additionally, it will highlight the importance of background screenings as part of a thorough due diligence process. When discussing client due diligence, it is important to clarify several common misconceptions. One frequent misunderstanding is the belief that knowing the client personally eliminates the need to perform CDD. However, personal familiarity does not exempt a firm from its regulatory obligations, and full due diligence must still be conducted. Another misconception is that CDD is only required at the beginning of the client relationship. In fact, client due diligence is an ongoing obligation that must be revisited periodically, especially when there are changes in the client's behavior or risk level. There is also a tendency to apply a uniform level of due diligence to all clients, but regulations require a risk-based approach, meaning that higher-risk clients must undergo enhanced scrutiny. Some believe that collecting identity documents is sufficient, yet effective CDD also involves understanding the intended nature and purpose of the business relationship. Additionally, CDD is not limited to large transactions. Even small or infrequent activities may warrant attention if they are unusual or suspicious. Another common belief is that once CDD is completed, no further action is necessary. In reality, ongoing monitoring is essential to ensure continued compliance. Lastly, it is a mistake to view CDD as a mere administrative task. It is, in fact, a vital component of an organization's overall risk management framework. There is a legal obligation under Article 58A of the Anti-Money Laundering Law, as well as in ICPAC's AML directive, to carry out client due diligence. This means you are required to identify and verify the identity of your clients and understand the nature of their activities. Beyond the legal requirement, there is also an ethical responsibility. As professionals, you are gatekeepers of the financial system and as such should be aware of who you are assisting and for what purpose. Without this awareness, you risk enabling criminal activity, even unintentionally. Client due diligence is not just a regulatory task, it is a critical safeguard that upholds the integrity of the profession and helps protect the public interest. Failing to perform adequate client due diligence can have serious consequences. Firstly, there are legal and regulatory penalties. Competent authorities can impose substantial administrative fines for non-compliance with AML obligations. Secondly, there's the risk of reputational damage. Even the perception that your firm may have assisted suspicious clients can harm your credibility and trust with existing and potential clients. And perhaps most importantly, there are ethical consequences. By not conducting proper due diligence, you might unknowingly be facilitating serious crimes such as child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, or drug trafficking. In other words, not performing CDD it is not just a technical oversight, it can have real-world harm and long-term impact. Begin by identifying and verifying the identity of your client. In addition, take reasonable steps to verify the identity and place of residence of the beneficial owner. It is essential to understand the client's ownership and control structure, as well as to assess the intended purpose and nature of the business relationship. Ongoing monitoring should be conducted to ensure that the information initially gathered remains accurate and up to date. Client due diligence must always be applied proportionately, based on a risk-based approach. Finally, it is critical to maintain proper records of all information gathered throughout the process. You are required to apply client due diligence measures before entering into a business relationship or carrying out an occasional transaction. Specifically, CDD should be conducted in the following situations. 1. When establishing a business relationship. 2. When carrying out an occasional transaction of €15,000 or more, whether it's a single transaction or several linked transactions that add up to this amount. 3. When there is a suspicion of money laundering or terrorist financing, regardless of the transaction amount or whether a business relationship exists. 4. When there are doubts about the accuracy or adequacy of previously obtained CDD information, this could be due to inconsistent details, changes in client behavior, or outdated documents. It's essential that CDD is not treated as a one-time formality but as a responsive and ongoing obligation. Client due diligence isn't just for new clients, it also applies to existing clients. CDD procedures should be carried out at appropriate times throughout the client relationship to ensure the information you have remains accurate and up to date. For existing clients, CDD may be performed in two main situations. 1. When there is a change in the client's relevant circumstances, for example, a change in ownership, address, business activity, or risk profile. 2. During scheduled or routine CDD updates, as part of your ongoing monitoring obligations. This ensures that previously collected information is still valid and reflects the client's status. Keeping CDD information current is essential for managing risk and ensuring compliance over the life of the client relationship. Change-driven updates to client due diligence are an important part of ongoing monitoring. These updates are triggered when relevant aspects of the client's profile or activity change, potentially impacting their risk level. Common triggers for updating CDD include suspicions related to money laundering or terrorist financing, changes in the beneficial ownership of the client, changes in the services provided to the client, especially if new services carry different risk exposures, changes in the professional servicing the client, which may indicate, for example, that the client may be trying to avoid detection or scrutiny from someone familiar with their activities. Changes in the client's general affairs, such as structure, operations, or governance. A shift in the client's line of business or the nature of their economic activities. Expansion or relocation to a new geographical area, particularly to or from high-risk jurisdictions. Changes in key management personnel, especially in senior leadership or compliance roles. Application for or attainment of citizenship through the Citizenship by Investment Program, CIP. And any other significant changes that may affect the client's risk profile or the adequacy of existing CDD information. Each of these changes should prompt a reassessment of the client and, if needed, updates to their due diligence file. Background screening is a key element of effective client due diligence. It involves conducting checks against sanctions lists, politically exposed persons lists, and other relevant watch lists to identify any potential risks associated with a client. This process should be carried out as part of the initial CDD onboarding of any new client, during change-driven updates when a client's circumstances change, and as part of routine or scheduled CDD reviews. The goal is to ensure that no client poses a legal, financial, or reputational risk due to their background or associations. Depending on the size and risk profile of your client base, it is highly recommended to use a specialist electronic database for these screenings. However, it is equally important to ensure that such databases are regularly updated and contain comprehensive data. At the same time, conducting searches through public search engines, such as Google, can provide an additional layer of due diligence. Part 2 will cover the identification and verification of natural persons and legal entities. I hope you found this useful. For any queries, you may contact us at compliance@icpac.org.cy. Thank you and goodbye.